You're going to make some great friends while you're here, lifetime friends that we can rely on for the future. And we're going to need each other. And I tell you what, we're not at the end of the struggle, we're just at the beginning. And we're going to need each other every day to rebuild what they tried to destroy. All right, I'm now going to invite up Father Naugle, Joseph Stylman, and Cooper Davis. Come on up. Yeah. Where's Josh? And, you know, I think maybe, oh, here we go, yeah. I think maybe we should just start with, thank you. Janet, is there anything I need to add? No. Okay, so this is Janet Gorbitz, who's operations manager. She initially suggested we do a conference here at Polyface, and I was like, I don't understand. Why would people want to come out to a farm in the middle of nowhere? But she's smart, right? She's smart, and I trusted. Hey, cuz. And I trusted her instincts, and I also said, if this flops, it's on you. Well, it didn't flop. Okay. All right, gentlemen. Can we just pick up on that theme that I was just mentioning? Josh, I'm going to start with you. This idea that the style of our times is normally invisible to us because we're in the middle of it, but we don't exactly know what it is. But tell us what it is that's happening. I feel it. Do you feel it? Go ahead. Can you please introduce the guest? Yeah, this is Josh Stylman. He's a writer for Brownstone. Josh Stylman. Yeah.
Thank you.
I accept for publication at least half your articles.
I'm a little too out there sometimes even for Brownstone, although then about 6 months later, Jeffrey calls me and says, so that thing you sent me, as it turns out, I think you were right. Sorry.
That's true.
So you're asking me for answers, but inherently I have no answers. I only have more questions. Because as it turns out, to wake up as a middle-aged person and realize that everything you were ever taught and thought you knew to be true turned out to be false. So we are in a time where we have an epistemological problem. And I think individually, we're all trying to find solutions, and then events like this and just Brownstone's existence brings us together for community. And I think, just echoing the sentiment, Polyface is the perfect place to do this. It is the representation of everything pure, natural, biological, when we are living in a world that is seemingly every day more obviously synthetic, artificial, and fiat, frankly. So I am sorry to defer the question, but I think we have to start with what is truth. And it starts with, well, let's see. Can we believe things we see with our own eyes or experiment on? Is family real? Is community real? And maybe let's also do the inverse. If it's in an organization, or if we're getting information from an organization like the New York Times or Politico, it's very likely not going to be true. Or maybe a half-truth, which is sometimes more dangerous because it lures people in. And it also, we've seen over the last 5 years, we've seen a lot of false idols as well, starting with, say, remember that cringeworthy video of Gal Gadot and a bunch of celebrities singing Imagine to us all, pampered in their mansions, telling us all to stay home.
During the lockdowns?
It was during the lockdowns, which gave way to, a bunch of famous people like the football player Travis Kelce and Madonna and others telling us all to get vaccinated, which, it's sort of this false idol worship. And Father and I were talking about that earlier. So, and then you've, of course, got the high priest of Anthony Fauci, who they all ultimately pray to. And I think some of that is just the replacement of, what is real with these just, it's entirely fake. And I think once you see it, you can't unsee it, and we all just need to break away. So I'll get off my
Aaron, have you looked at Aaron Siri's new book yet?
I ordered it. I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, okay. Well, so the whole thing is structured around the idea, it's called Vaccines Amen. Okay. And by the way, this is not an anti-vax conference. I'm sorry we keep talking about it. But, well, it kind of
Safe
is.
and effective.
But he structures the whole book around this idea that vaccines are themselves a kind of religion and that the shots are sacraments, you know? And he kind of riffs on this theme over and over again. But during the weird times of lockdowns, I saw them construct a kind of liturgy for us, a sort of ritual behavior, like what's that, hand sanitizer, you know? Took the place of holy water, so everybody was, sanitized. And then we had these taking the place of traditional genuflection or something like that. You would go in and sit down, take off your mask, and then stand up and wear your mask to go to the bathroom, come back, take down your mask. And everybody got weirdly good at this very quickly, And little children yelling at you, put your mask over your nose. Shut up, you little shit. But, I mean, right? This is going on. So if I may, I'll just take it over to Father Naugle and ask you to, did you see, yes you did, the unfolding of a kind of ritualist, liturgical element here?
Well, ultimately, I'm a firm believer that we are born for a natural sort of priesthood.
Is his mic on? Yeah. Okay.
We are born for a natural sort of priesthood. From the very beginning, we are spiritual beings, but we also have bodies. So we're in the image and likeness of God, but we share all this material stuff with the animals and plants. And my thoughts coming into this, especially what's the solution, it's to remember who we are in the face of the fact that the definition of sin is an attempt to make us forget who we are. So John Paul II had this amazing series of Wednesday audiences called Theology of the Body. It was mainly about defending the church's sexual ethics, but I want to focus specifically on the anthropology and ecology. Think of it like a 3-panel piece of art. If you're really fancy like Jeffrey, you would call that a triptych. Some of us might just call it a 3-panel comic strip, okay?
A triptych.
Triptych, yes. One of those beautiful pieces of art that opens into 3 panels. At creation, Adam's alone, original solitude. Only way he can understand himself is through his body and through observing the fact that his body's part of all this. He's one. When he says I, there's no multiple voices. Original unity. The woman is created, one flesh, one bond. But there's also an original unity with everything around. None of the animals are trying to kill them. The earth freely gives up its food. In fact, there's even an implication that carnivorous behavior comes only after the fall. What happens? The serpent sells Eve on transhumanism. Don't believe your body. Don't believe that you're capable of dying. Instead, think that you can be something which is metaphysically impossible. You can be legitimately a god yourself. And she buys that lie, and that fractures us within. And we experience that all the time, right? We say, I didn't eat that donut. My sweet tooth did. Because we're fractured inside, right? And then our relationships are fractured. Immediately after the fall, Adam and Eve are looking like a typical married couple after about 10 years, right? Your urge is for your husband, but he will rule and dominate you. This dominance, subservience, and it marks all of our relationships, because now all of this is vaguely trying to kill us, and we want to dominate the land rather than live in harmony with it. And of course, what we would say from a religious point of view is Christ wants to reintegrate our disintegration and give us mutual submission in replacement of the dominance-subservience relationship. And what are these voices around us telling us? It's the same lie as the serpent. You can still avoid death. You don't have to believe your body. You might be trapped in a wrong body. You might be a furry. Be your real self that only you know on some weird Gnostic level. And if only you dominate all of your political opponents as well as the land by blasting chemicals at it, if only you blast yourself with the right chemicals, we will break back into paradise. Because ultimately it's God's fault we're not there, right? That's sort of a priesthood of the Antichrist. Of trying to deny who we were created to be and deny our relationship with all of this. So when you talk about all these rituals, all I saw was dark doppelganger of real religion.
Yeah, there was also a strange element here too, where people were desperately afraid of an invisible thing. But the human mind's not good at not visualizing the invisible. So they began to imagine that they could sort of see the virus or know where it was, right? So it's not in our community, it's a neighborhood community. It's not inside, it's outside. Oh, wait, it's not outside, it's inside. And they kept flipping that back and forth. You know, this sort of strange capacity of the human mind to fill in the blanks of the unknown.
But isn't that a tried and true part of their playbook, the invisible boogeyman? So we've got the war on terror, the war on drugs, the war on COVID, and now it seems like next is going to be the war on climate. And every one of those things, we have bureaucrats rearranging how people live.
Well, we have the war on disinformation, right?
Well, exactly. And this is what, again, back to the point of, I think, truth is the atomic unit. Fear is really powerful, and we all probably saw in some way our own family and friends capitulate to it. And we maybe all have in our own ways as well.
To move it over to Cooper now very quickly. You wrote a wonderful, I don't know if you've read this brilliant piece of sociology that he wrote for Brownstone the other day called, what was the title of it? It was J. Cruanon, about how a sort of a well-to-do upper middle class, or that's not the right word. It's more like the haute bourgeoisie, right?
Well, you injected the haute bourgeoisie. I pretended to know what you meant.
Well, I thought it worked.
Yeah, well, as far as I know, it did.
I mean, it's a French word. You
Yeah.
know. Okay.
Well, it sounds okay. The argument was the case I was making was that what we saw during COVID. I mean, there's different ways to look at it, and I think for a lot of people here, and a lot of my friends and myself, to a degree, saw this as like a quote unquote a mask off moment, a revelation of something very dark that has been quietly built, in the shadows, and then, all of a sudden you can sort of see this infernal structure, right? There's another way to look at it. It was the ruling class and the ruling structures of our world. They jumped the shark. Okay? They passed into ludicrousness. And it didn't reveal perhaps it didn't reveal like an omniscient and omnipotent, like horrifying, dystopian, inescapable power structure. Perhaps it revealed absolute stupidity, incompetence, failure to understand human beings on an individual or family or even community level.
That piece of, if I could just stop you right there, there's a couple of things that suggest strong evidence for this. One is the long-term school closures. That was very strange to me because as it was happening, I thought this is going to destroy the public school.
Unforced error.
Yeah, this is going to destroy the public school system. The proudest achievement of the progressive cause is now being dismantled before our eyes. I don't think they were intended that necessarily. The other thing was the failure of the shots and the fact that the shots were actively damaging to people, and that this was going to at some point become obvious. and why would they lock down the entire country for 8, 9, 10 months on the promise of some salvific potion that turns out not to work and actually do damage? Like that was not. Let's just say that was not wise, even from their point of view.
And so what was perhaps revealed is ineptitude, and what you now have is a political movement that is an intellectual movement that has one expression in a political movement that I think just won this election by a lot. But underneath that, it's not so much MAGA or MAHA or whatever these superficial sort of like branded segments might be. And of course, the media wants to focus on those characters, right? The MAHA movement, the MAGA, Trump, Kennedy, right? They want to focus on the characters within this narrative construction. For them, are these superficial expressions of a movement. But underneath that, you have, for the first time, I think, something that was inevitable as soon as the internet showed up, something really overdue. People en masse sort of see through the veil of mass media, right, of manipulation, and you can't unsee that. And so, at the same time, you have to get on with your life. Some of us do dedicate ourselves to cataloging these enormously horrifying things that happened in great detail, and that's important and worthy work. But the meat of this movement or this shift in the culture are people who are just living their lives as they always have, except with an ambient awareness that they cannot trust what is delivered to them. And that's sociologically looking forward, that's going to have enormous repercussions. That is not going to get stuffed back into the bag. That cat is out.
Yeah.
Right? For good.
So you've got somebody like, let's say half the New York Times subscribers are reading with a feeling of incredulity.
How about 20%?
20?
Well, most of them are just doing the Wordle. That's where the revenue is.
I agree with you, and I loved your piece, by the way. I in fact, messaged you to tell you as much. But this is one segment of the population. I think what we're also living through is this entirely fractured reality, where you've got whatever the percentage of the New York Times reader that still treats it as gospel. So, and oftentimes those are our friends and neighbors. So we're Northeasterners. We know a lot of these people. And we are now, how does a society survive, let alone thrive, when you've got entirely different views of what is true and what is real? And you can literally ask 5 different people about the same event. Talk about the tragedy with Charlie. There are lots of different views of what might have happened or who might be behind that. And, ultimately there is only one truth. And I think, some of us are looking for it. Some of us, to the point of the ritual, I think one of the biggest takeaway for me of the last 5 years is humans are mimics. And, just wind them up and tell them what to do and they're going to do it. And quickly, to your point. So
that's the shock to me. That's the part I couldn't really understand. How it is that in the spring of 2020, everything seemingly fell apart so quickly, and everyone was so compliant so quickly, whereas 6 months earlier, I had no idea that anything like that was possible or coming. But in retrospect, I realized that something was really rotten about the foundation of whatever it is we call freedom. Something was missing. Something had been eroded over the decades.
Just to respond to what you're saying, Josh, I think...
Why are you pointing at me, Cooper?
Well, I'm trying to articulate... Yeah. Because I'm picking up on your comment, not what Jeffrey just said, which was very good, Jeffrey, by the way.
Yeah, it was very insightful, I know, very insightful.
So I think you and I have lots of discussions, right? And I think I tend towards like a sort of compulsive optimism towards the future, and you don't always share that, right? But so
At some point, I'll respond to that.
okay. So here's my yes. Let's say that most people, you are still able to wind them up and send them off, even despite everything that's happened, right? But when people go from that to this, the flow doesn't go in the opposite direction, right? It only moves in one direction. And then there's a generational component here, and I think it's really important for us all to be thinking when we're sort of projecting into the future. You know, we have young kids, right? We watch how they grew up in a world where they are completely encumbered and overwhelmed with stimulation and screens and, just endless blah, 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 blah. The way that culture works, it's this pendulum that swings back and forth. And I think that the generation, for us, we remember what it was like in the time before, the decades, Jeffrey, that you're talking about, where things were slowly being built and we were being sort of, guided towards a certain way of being.
Yep.
Our kids are not that way. They're starting from this point, right?
Well, first of all, on the optimist thing, which I feel the need to address in a room full of some friends and some people who I've never met. I am a failed pessimist ultimately. So I'm an entrepreneur. You cannot do that unless you are an eternal optimist. So what I try to do is not have blind optimism. So because I see a lot, this psychological engineering operation is so powerful and has gone on for so long, well before we were born. My hypothesis is that our generation rode the wave of a pump and dump scheme, and the bill is due. And the great irony of coming to an event at a place like this and having to take the Woodrow Wilson Parkway, it was not lost on me, who was perhaps the original technocrat.
Yeah.
So when we now, I think you and I are like a Venn diagram. I think we probably agree on more than we don't. My fear is this operation is so sophisticated that there are lots of off-ramps that make us feel good. And I try to discern what I believe to be true and then determine how I feel about it versus getting rah-rah first, because it's very tempting. Don't get me, I was cheering when I saw the RFK hearings this week. They were remarkable. But I couldn't agree with your generational point more. And I have three, my wife is here, we have three teenagers who were, the fact that my children watched a man get shot in the neck on the internet is the most horrifying thing I could ever imagine as a parent. And I was trying to explain to them that this may be their JFK moment. Yeah. And my eldest said, but Charlie Kirk's not a president. I said, well, putting aside the fact that I believe he may have been at some point.
Absolutely.
This was shocking, I said, to Grandma and Grandpa's generation, which was so pure. That was a shocking moment then, and now juxtapose this. What can shock people anymore? Well, maybe this is it. Yeah. And I think we now are going to have a massive chasm with, depending on who the kids' parents are or their own life experiences or media diet, you're going to have half the kids are going to blindly obey authority, and the other half are going to empower themselves and trust their own agency and take control of their own lives. Father, you talk about boundaries a lot in your writing, and it's utterly inspiring, and I think we all need to do that more.
What does it mean that we seem to have entered into, we've left the realm of argument? I mean, Charlie was all about debate. He thought that was the answers. Just go to the campuses and have debates with people and we'll prove them right. It seems like we're living in a time of where blood is being shed all the time. The shooting of the Catholic school the other day, just unbelievable. And there's so much. It does seem like we're in a new phase with real genuine bloodshed. Like, it feels different suddenly now. I will just pause to say, maybe this is a consequence of the fact that we have won the argument. Very interesting thing with the way pharma has been dealing with all the meltdown of their stocks and their compliance with all their products and their growing incredulity, even if at the FDA, which I will tell you, that building was in fact visited by an exorcist earlier this year.
What building?
FDA. Yeah, exorcist. Floor by floor. Has it worked? I don't. Father, does it take a while for these things to take effect?
Well, ideally, the people inside need to stop sinning and bringing the demons in. So I think we need to chase those ones out too.
Okay. But it was instructive. Our friend Toby Rogers pointed this out to me. When pharma needed to defend itself at the Senate the other day, they sent not one of their big shots, not any major scientist, not a well-published author with credibility. They would not go. They were too afraid, so they sent this poor mannequin who, our friends just, kind of touched him a little bit and he fell over. So that's all they have, at this point. So here's the question. It's a serious question. Are we in a new phase of this struggle?
Every breakdown is an opportunity for a breakthrough. What I would suggest is stay humble and spiritual. Because the moment any of us get self-satisfied, well, to quote my favorite depiction of Satan, Al Pacino in The Devil's Advocate, vanity, definitely my favorite sin. There's a couple points in the movie where it's just that little smile of like, yeah, I did it, and nope.
I think that as far as Charlie Kirk's death goes, in this JFK moment, I think it's more. It's bigger. It's more, because what we have now are these parasocial relationships, podcasts. We were talking about this the other day. You can listen to the same podcast, every day, twice a week, for years, right? Your mind starts to experience. You come to know every vocal tick, the vocabulary, the sort of like rhetorical preferences of speakers, the way you know your close loved ones, right? It taps into something, deep inside of us. And I think Charlie Kirk, how many hundreds of thousands of hours out there have people, especially younger people, have grown up, okay, and come of age and literally developed their political philosophy in large part because of this guy in particular. Listening to him like every day for years. So to see him killed in this manner on television, I think it goes so far beyond, JFK. Everybody felt like they knew JFK, partly because that was the expectation at the time, right? But it was sort of aspirational, right? You just have his photo on the wall in every house. This is a different thing.
I couldn't agree more, Cooper. And the point about the parasocial relationship, both as hero and villain in society, because there are the people who are acting in a repugnant way, about a man who just lost his life, who also have a parasocial relationship but think he was a supervillain. I guess I would argue the through line from JFK to 9/11 to COVID to Charlie Kirk and all the others in between is trauma. Because if the objective was simply that this man was a threat because he was getting young people to become refugees from college or think for themselves, there are lots of ways to get rid of somebody. You can poison them. There's heart attack guns. There's lots of things you can do. This was designed to make sure that we all saw it and we all react to it in whatever way we're going to react to, and it's just kerosene on a fire that's already raging.
I don't understand. If the idea was to silence him, the effect is going to be the opposite.
Well, maybe this goes back to what Cooper was saying earlier about overplaying one's hand. I think it is likely, we probably all have our own theories of what happened. You know I do. But it's probably premature to know, to react to something we don't have facts on, right? We don't know exactly who did this. To me, I'm guessing a blue hair is not going to hit that shot. So that looked like a professional operation. Now the question is, who is it? And I know that's not the point of this, but it's very timely, and I think it's important that we all take a breath and just react. Stay vigilant, but don't take the bait. If I can make that subtle but very important distinction.
Yeah. The other thing that strikes me about, well, first of all, I think there are a lot of blue hairs out there, right? And stranger things.
here.
Not
Not
anti
here.
blue hair.
No, out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, the larger there.
Sure. Okay.
But let's even that stranger things have happened, right? And I think that we can easily veer into a preoccupation with what is happening behind the curtain. And certainly, as soon as this occurred, everybody's on Twitter or Blue Sky or whatever it is with the theories. Yep. And this is how we digest trauma, right? Is some of us do it by mapping the web of interrelated power, right? And all of this, and some of us do it in different ways. But my feeling is that we can look at history as a guide to a degree, but I think we generally underestimate how uncharted the territory is in front of us. Our relationship to technology, our dependence on technology, the enormity of just every single person here can take out their phone and look at their screen time statistics and be mortified, right? Maybe not everybody, maybe not Joel, right? But a lot of us. And just think about how rapid that shift has been. It's going to take generations for us to learn how to live with this technology in a way that doesn't hurt us and hurt each other and doesn't automatically distort things that are what they appear to be, right? But our response, and we have this tool that allows us to instantly fantasize, dream things up, make things more complicated.
The major problem is that the experience of the phone in your pocket is designed to be more interesting, compelling, and credible than any one in front of you. And what that means is that it has the capacity to shatter all of our social relationships, our friendships, our relationships with our family, our relationships with our community. If we don't have the discipline to keep the phone in our pockets when we're talking to a friend, that's going to be a problem. If you're sitting around a table and you pull out your phone, you have said this little electronic. Zuckerberg is more interesting than anybody here at this table. That is an insult. It's grotesque. All right, we don't think of it that way. I think we need to start thinking of it that way, and we need to start. I'm sorry, we have to start calling it out. Maybe be a little less polite. All right, we're coming up to the end here, and I do want, I want Father to address this bigger theme, which I wanted somebody to address. Nobody addressed it. That's okay. Maybe it's all in my head, but I do feel like we're living in the midst of dramatic, paradigmatic, if you know what I mean by that term, shift. Like an orthodoxy has collapsed, and we don't have a new one yet. And so we're in this pre-paradigmatic moment of searching and finding truths. That's why we've come back to the land together. Father, can you just address that point? Am I right about this?
Yes, and I think history's full of these moments, right? The world lost faith in faith, so it turned to reason. But reason didn't seem to avoid world wars and other things. So postmodernism comes along and starts to question reason. Well, what do we have left now once you've got rid of faith and reason? you have narrative, you have subjective experience. And now that's beginning to collapse because the only way to enforce that is with force, whether it's outright violence or simply canceling people. And I think for the first time in these recent days and weeks, people are finally confronting the fact that spite is a motivating factor in all this. And I've said online, spite is one of the clearer signs of the diabolical at work. Just ruining things for the sake of ruining them. The question is, moving forward, do we meet spite with spite? Or do we bring in the exorcist trying to cast it out? Because, when you team up with the communists to cast out the Nazi, you end up with decades of oppression because you picked one devil over the other rather than casting out devils. And I think that's the critical moment we're at is, are we going to double down with spite and try to impose with force? Or is there going to be something truly loving and human in its place? And I see a decision tree that we need to make as a collective. Of course, I would sell religion as a major component, but I'm a bit biased here.
Well, thank you, Cooper and Father Naugle and Josh for a wonderful panel. And I'll invite up our next guys. Are you? Yeah, come on up.